welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. In continuation with the series on sociological theories, in today's lecture we are going to discuss a method in social science, that is ethnomethodology. We are going to understand some of the key concepts used in this by Garfinkel to understand the method of studying social reality. Let us first try to understand the contribution that ethnomethodology made to sociology. There are two important fundamental contributions. Number one, it established a new and distinctive field of study to investigate the ordinary ways of practical action used by members of society to understand and organize the daily life. So, unlike the traditional sociology that was trying to arrive at laws, at generalized grand theories, ethnomethodology gave us a new way of understanding the way the people are behaving and interacting in society. The second contribution is ethnomethodology dismantled society's assumed existence before its analysis. Garfinkel creatively reversed Durkheim's famous principle of the objectivity of social fact. So, according to Durkheim, the task of the sociologist was to observe, compare and analyze social reality, and the social reality was a objective reality which the sociologist had to understand. Garfinkel says that even social fact is constructed. There is nothing given a priority to the interaction. The fact changes from the context and setting in which it is placed. Third contribution, ethnomethodology bridged the perceived divide between common sense and scientific reasoning. So, these were kind of considered as two apart. Scientific reasoning was considered to be more rational, more true, and to be assuming a hierarchy over common sense thinking. Ethnomethodology would kind of do away with this, and kind of this nothing like objective reality as such. Now, let us look at some of the core concepts used in ethnomethodological investigation. These core concepts are: number one, reflexivity; number two, indexicality; number three, sanctioned properties of common discourse; and number four, sense in a senseless situation. So, let us look at each of them briefly. Reflexivity. Reflexivity focuses attention on how people's interaction go about maintaining the presumption that they are guided by a particular reality. A reflexive action, therefore, is an action the acting agent takes upon itself. So, we reflect on it. So, just as we kind of understand reflex ray in science in terms of the light falling on the mirror, it kind of reflects. Similarly, in any setting, in any situation, social actors kind of take that action on themselves and reflect on it. In broader sense, a reflexive action operates to maintain a certain vision of reality. For example, ritual activity directed towards the goal in the belief that God influences everyday affair. So, we are reflecting on our everyday reality. So, many a time, a very common example is that if a student's life, if we have an examination, we generally make it a practice to go to the temple to pray. Now, why we have reflected on it? That if we need some kind of a blessings for us to do well in the examination, it is important that we take the blessings from the Almighty. So, we reflect on what we are going to do and accordingly organize our action. Most of the human interaction is reflexive. Humans interpret cues, gestures, words and other information from each other in a way that sustains particular vision of reality. Even contradictory evidence is reflexively interpreted to maintain a body of belief and knowledge. Order in society stems, at least in part, from people's reflexivity. The ethnomethodologist rejects the idea that order comes from mere conformity to norms. So, if we look into the functionalist analysis, they would say that if everybody follows the norm of the society, if we conform to the norm, then there will be order. This is being rejected. Here it is that there will be an order only when actors are aware of their action. They reflect on their action and act accordingly. So, if they are not aware, if they are not reflective, then there could be a possibility of conflict and disorder. The second concept is indexicality. Indexicality is a concept which describes a property of language and ordinary talk. It refers to the fact that a word may have a meaning which holds true for all situations in which the word is used. Example, its dictionary meaning. But a word also has a meaning which relates to the particular situation in which it is being used. So, here the indexicality implies in terms of the particular meaning with reference to the setting in which it is being used. Indexicality means that there is a particular code, grammar or vocabulary used among people in a given reason. For example, the sentence "she was there" has different meaning for both "she" and "there," depending upon the particular occasion or situation in which the sentence was used. More generally, any sentence is understood in terms not only of the literal meaning of its word, but in terms of the surrounding conversation and knowledge of the people talking. So, there are certain kind of common meaning, but then there are also particular meaning of a certain word which are understood only by the actors of the particular setting. Any piece of talk stands for an index more than it actually says. For example, "Where is your son? He is at home" indexes a whole range of things which are available to the speakers. So, it will be an index of in terms of a lot of relations, lot of activities that is happening at that particular point of time. Indexicality refers to understand a particular situation based on contextual reality. In this sense, the gesture, cues, words, and other information sent and received by interacting parties have a meaning in a particular context. So, if many a time, same gesture can have different meaning depending on the setting. So, if we pat on the cheeks of, say, a friend, it is kind of a friendly gesture. But if we pat or use our hands to slap on an elderly, then it could be a kind of considered as a misbehavior. So, the gesture does not have a defined uniform meaning. All the cues, gesture, words, language, they become meaningful only in the context in which they are used. Without knowing the context, it would be possible to misinterpret the symbolic communication among interacting individuals. In other words, the practical sociological reasoning of ethnomethodology is based on the indexical properties of members' talk and conduct. The third is sanctioned properties of common discourses. This refers to people's expectation that there will be no interference with the conduct of everyday affairs in the form of questions about what is reality said. Person requires those properties of discourse. Discourse is the everyday conversation between members, between actors in the process of interaction. So, person requires these properties of discourse as conditions under which they are themselves entitled and entitle others to claim that they know what they are talking about. In other words, it is expected and required that people understand everyday talk in the same way that it is so that common conversational affairs can be conducted without interference. So the discourse can take place only when both or more than all the interacting actors have a accepted sense or a shared understanding of the topic or the issue on which they are conversing. Another method which is used in understanding ethnomethodology is breaching experiment. Garfinkel and his associate conducted a number of interesting empirical studies to know and to understand of their assumption about what is real. For this, they used a method for empirical inquiry which is known as breaching experiment, in which the normal course of interaction is deliberately interrupted by the researcher. Garfinkel, in fact, is recognized a real experiment in formal sense of the term and might better be called breaching demonstration. In these demonstrations, social reality is breached in order to demonstrate the basic principle or ceaseless reality construction. The objective of breaching experiment is to disrupt normal procedures to that the process by which reality is constructed or reconstructed, and this can be observed. Breaching experiments are undertaken to illustrate how people make sense of everyday life. And one of the demonstration of the breaching experiment is the use of this method by Garfinkel in his analysis of gender, social phenomena, inequality. So here we will try to understand breaching method by looking into his analysis of doing gender. Garfinkel shows how society confers certain social and sexual status on every individual. In case of some irregularities in these ways, some people manage to achieve desired sexual status. Garfinkel calls this process as passing. And this passing is a general social process whereby members of a marginalized or oppressed minority take on the role and identity of the majority. Most of the time, the term passing is used for transgender in terms of cross-dressing or acquiring a gender which has not been attributed to them by society. In 1950, Garfinkel met a person named Agnes who seemed unquestionably a woman. So the first time Garfinkel saw this person, he thought that this was a woman in terms of the physical behavior, the pretty face, this gender stereotype understanding of femininity. Her voice was soft, her attire and kind of good complexion, no facial hair, and had used lipstick. So the outwardly expression of the physiology gave that understanding that this person was a woman. But very soon Garfinkel discovered that Agnes had not always been a woman. She was a boy until she was 16 years of the age, and after that she had the desire to be a girl. So Agnes ran away from the house and soon kind of understood that if she dressed like a woman, she would be accepted. by the other. But then that was not enough. In order to be completely accepted as a woman, that was her internal desire, she would have to kind of learn to act like or to pass as a woman if she was kind of to be in that identity. Agnes learned the accepted practices and as a result came to define herself as a woman. Garfinkel was interested in this process of passing, the passing device which Agnes used to achieve a desired female sex status in the society. So this is also kind of example when we try to do in gender, the doing gender itself kind of hints that gender is not assigned by birth, it is a social construction. So Garfinkel highlights the point that people as member of society and certain category learn and routinely use the routine practice that allow them to pass successfully as men or women. So society has constructed certain dressing norms, certain behavioral norm, which makes us easily categorize people into men and women. Now, there is a possibility of people from the other group to pass on to the one which they desire. So it is only through learning the practices that was kind of considered as assigned to be feminine and to acquire the gender status. Therefore, the ethnomethodological approach explains that even a category like gender, which is thought to be a ascribed status, can be understood as accomplishment of a set situated practices which was commonly assigned to a particular gender, can be learned and can be used by the people from the other gender. The second method in ethnomethodology is documentary method. Another way of trying to understand is the documentary method of interpretation. The documentary method involves an effort to identify an underlying pattern behind a series of appearances such that each appearance is seen as referring to an expression of or a kind of a document. It is constantly used by people to interpret and reinterpret each other behavior and look for underlying pattern. So the documentary method is basically documenting the practices of reality. So we create a document in itself, in our mind, in our subconscious mind, and that enables us to reflect on our action and create certain kind of shared meanings and norms for behavior. Garfinkel's ethnomethodology emphasizes on members' method rather than the member of the society. So this is again a development in sociology. Earlier, the focus of analysis were individual as members of society. In ethnomethodology, the focus is on the members' method, how they are going to behave, what kind of meaning they are going to assign, whether they have reflected on their action or not. So, ethnomethodologists ask about how such meanings are locally managed and the method by which members in the setting accomplish the here and there practical relevance of their understanding. It can be said that ethnomethodological studies end at the point where symbolic interactionist study begin. In this sense, Garfinkel's idea of ethnomethodology is better known for sociological practical reasoning that emphasizes on the inquiry of a particular situation, and this would then kind of labeled into micro-sociology. So the traditional sociologists were developing grand theories and they were kind of part of the macro. So use that in terms of understanding the entire society as one unit, whereas ethnomethodology would divide the entire society into particular units, and the study is then at a micro level. After trying to understand the key concepts, let us try to look into some of the limitations of the method or the criticism that it has achieved. For Garfinkel, sociology is the study of moral order, operating through organized practices of everyday life in the individual's drive for rationality and congruence with this order in his or her interaction with others. Accordingly, social organization is dynamic, ongoing, representing negotiated orders between interacting individuals as they interpret and attempt to make sense out of every life. Such a paradigm has proved highly controversial and raises a number of distinct issues. Ethnomethodology, in its emphasis upon a normatively valued moral order, be viewed as simply a different from structural functionalism in its systematic, macroscopic, and universalistic qualities. Like symbolic interactionism, ethnomethodology is more of a perspective than a theory and reveals many theoretical gaps in rather simplistic and mechanical model of social reality. Further is the extent to which Garfinkel appears to neglect the structural context in which rationality emerges, that is, the effect of varying group characteristic on this process. Finally, the problem of microscopic reductionism. All aspect of social system becomes a function of the congruence rationality process. It does not tell us anything very important. By definition, the big political and social issues of the day are beyond its scope, since the concern is with how we constitute this world rather than what we constitute as being. So, these are some of the criticism against ethnomethodology. To get a good understanding of the ethnomethodology, there is a list of references that is very important. Most important is Garfinkel's own work published in 1967, Studies in Ethnomethodology. The second is Clayman, Ethnomethodology in International Encyclopedia of Social Behavioral Science, and then the third reference is A. Rawls, in which he's written Harold Garfinkel. This is a chapter in Ritzer's and Stefanski edited book, Companion to Major Social Theories, published by Blackwell, London. With these references, we have a good understanding of ethnomethodology. With this, I come to an end of today's lecture. Thank you.